Hey everybody, welcome to your readings for the week. These are the readings for the week ending July 15th. We do have some crazy moon action going on for some of you out there, and of course that affects some of you even if the moon is not in your sign, if there's planets interacting with that moon. Let's just dive right in there, shall we? We're going to start with Darcy, because that's how we roll. Or at least until I get an Aries on the list, that's how we roll. Uranus and Jupiter. It's still all about Uranus and Jupiter, of course. That's not going to change for a while. All focus is on finances, though, and Jupiter is all about growth and expansion. And so when that's pointed at your finances, that's definitely a good thing. And that influence, the only aspect that Jupiter really has this week with any of the planets is its sextile with Saturn, which is a very positive aspect. So it's not creating a challenge for you to get over. We get tired of those. I get it. Saturn's focus is on your day-to-day schedule, and Saturn is a retrograde. So I really feel that that's like sort of Saturn reminding you that you're in charge of your schedule, in terms of making extra money or what have you. Just because somebody comes along and needs something at the last minute doesn't mean that you have to give up that time. Sometimes you just have to stay strict to what you need to do for you, if that makes sense. All the problems, if problems there are going to come from Uranus, of course. Of course, right? Because Uranus continues to be squared with Mars and Venus, which are moving again very close in conjunction with each other. Sort of like they're right now, they're sort of chasing each other. That's going to end here pretty soon. In the next few weeks, actually, I should say. So this is a little bit of a challenge because here you're looking for different new ways of making money, ways that people haven't thought of before, stepping out of the traditional, I have to get some dead end job for the rest of my existence in order to live, kind of a financial mentality. And Uranus squared with Venus and Mars. First of all, Venus and Mars are like the epitome of the masculine feminine, right? So, and they're both focused on your support system. And while you may have these kind of crazy ideas that are a little bit uncomfortable because it is a little bit risky, Uranus is all about taking risks. You have the naysayers over here going, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Oh my God, don't do that. And that really sort of deflates your bubble. You get really excited and then they are not very supportive. And then that's a deflation of the bubble a little bit. This intensifies when the moon moves into your sign, which is literally happening not quite. I thought we did start off in Aries. Okay. I just don't know how to read my shit. That's all. Okay. The moon moving into your sign starts on Tuesday. Wednesday, when it moves into conjunction with Uranus, it really blows this up into something like a lot bigger. So instead of course, you're not on board, it becomes an emotional thing. It becomes a trigger. It becomes, why does nobody ever support me? And that's not true. People do support you. You have had supportive people around you in your life. And actually, this is proven by the grand sextile that Uranus is in with Pluto and Neptune. The moon intensifies that as well. So basically, Pluto is focused on home. We have Neptune focus on your day-to-day schedule. It's almost like these things are lining up for you to make a little extra money on the side from home in some way, regardless of whether you have the support to do that or not. And let's face it, you don't need support. Most people who are successful didn't do it with a partner, or if they did, they screwed over their partner at some point or got screwed over by their partner at some point. So, you want to be successful on your own 2 feet. This is really hard for a lot of women because a lot of the women that I work with who are very strong, independent women, they own their own houses. They, financially, they take care of everything themselves because they're not married. And they have to rely solely on themselves. And every single one of them is like, I'm tired of doing it. I want a man. I want to be able to be one of those women that has a man to rely on. That just because you have one doesn't mean they're always reliable. Even if they're reliable most of the time, shit happens, So I feel like you're moving out of that. Not that you were in that phase, but you're moving out of that phase and looking at this in a completely different way. And it's very freeing for you. I feel very excited for you. And the people that don't get it, it's not up to them to get it because they're not walking in your shoes. Only you can really understand what you're going through in the grand scheme of things, if that makes sense. So that is also going on all week long as well. You've got these great, fantastic ideas. So what if nobody is supportive of them? So what if most of the time people are unsupportive because they have their own agendas anyways, let's face it, if you're successful and all of a sudden your success takes you to Washington, D.C., you're not there doing whatever it is that they need you to do all the time, so, or they're going to miss you. They don't want anything to change. That doesn't mean you don't change. You have to do what is best for you. And that's it. So lots of energy going into big things for you this week, because I feel like you've been sitting there with your toes in the water, testing out the temperature long enough. Like I literally am visualizing walking by and just shoving you in there. Of course, that I would never do that to a Taurus woman because I value my life. Thank you very much. But it's sort of the push that you need to take that first step. And it's scary and it's exciting. I've got butterflies just thinking about it. But it could be the best decision you ever made. And that's what you have to focus on. So that is what I have for you this week, Darcy. Moving on to Kendra, still have Jupiter and Uranus putting all of their energy into your finances this week. And we don't have major challenges, but we do have some challenges because, we just can't go through life without challenges. It's really, we just can't, I think life, in the definition of life, challenge, it comes up because otherwise, what's the point of being here, right? Anyways, little bit of a challenge, yes. Not a major one, little bit of a challenge. Specifically with Uranus. Now, creating a challenge, but creating a very helpful aspect around the challenge at the same time. And then with the moon coming in also, about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're going to be dealing with some emotional moon issues, moving into Taurus there a little bit, specifically looking at Wednesday when the moon moves into conjunction with Uranus and enters into the square that Uranus has with Mars and Venus. Now, it's a little challenge, okay? There are bigger challenges. This is not the biggest challenge in the world, which is good. But I'm looking at this in terms of and it's really interesting for you, actually. Uranus is all about looking outside the box. We said it a million times, and we're looking at finances. We're looking for ideas that are not the traditional ideas for generating an income. And I see two different streams. right now, that's what you have with Amazon, as well as the business that you're creating right now, the project that you're working on. But actually, I see the project that you're working on and a different stream. So I'm not sure if that means that an opportunity is presenting itself, or an old opportunity maybe coming back and representing itself. It will be very interesting to see what happens. It's possible that a completely different opportunity presents itself all of a sudden this week, which would be cool as well. We also have a grand sextile. Uranus is in a grand sextile with Pluto, as well as Neptune. And this sort of opens up time in your schedule that maybe you didn't think you had, especially when other things come in to fill time that you don't really have, if that makes sense, because that's where the challenge is coming in. You have these plans and these goals in order to create this income, but you're not getting the support that you need in order to do that. But that can also mean that other responsibilities are getting in the way. So let's say signing up the kids for school, taking them school shopping. We're not quite in the end of summertime, but you're in a completely different place. So it takes a little bit more work to get these kids adjusted, if that makes sense. So I do see a lot of your time being taken up with what you absolutely have to do with Amazon. And then, of course, what you need to do with family, if that makes sense. Not that your husband isn't being supportive. I 100% see that. I also want to say, because it just popped in my head, I think at this stage, he would probably be perfectly happy being a stay-at-home dad and letting you take care of everything. I think he's been loving it. I think he's been absolutely loving it. So that may be something that comes up. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. The moon coming into your sign intensifies all of it. Okay, because that's what the moon does. It just adds an emotional layer to everything, which is just like so awesome, right? The biggest concern really is how it intensifies that square with Venus and Mars, because again, those are focused on your support system. So your goals, and you're trying to do something and not having support, that is going to trigger some of those deep, I'm not important, what I need isn't important, those very deep triggers there. Take the time to go through the trigger. You know the drill, you know how to do it. You've been doing it for a while now. Take the time to do it. Don't push it in the back burner. Take the time to deal with it. Roll through the punches, and get your rest time so that you can wake up the next day and kick some ass, because it's ultimately what your goal is. Dude, I'm literally visualizing door after door after door after door opening. It's crazy. And so, yeah, that's what I have for you this week. Moving on to Jeannette, right? Yes, Jeannette. Nothing. I'm sorry. Well, no planets, I should say, in Gemini this week. We do continue to still have Vespa in Gemini. It's fresh. I brewed a fresh cup before I started. This is really nice. Okay, Vespa. Vespa is the eternal flame burning on the heart. To me, that brings us back home. And that could be the home that you're living in. But I always visualize it. Well, for me, I visualize being about 8 years old, laying on the floor in front of the fireplace, watching the fire. In my grandma's house, which was my security place. So to me, that's what Vespa represents. She represents my grandma's house when I was little. It's like that place that I could relax and feel secure and safe. And I feel like that safe is coming up around you this week, that word safe or being safe in some way. And I'm kind of picking up that it's about being safe when it comes to money. So that either could be that you are trying to play it safe by not spending money that you don't need to, or that there's an opportunity presenting itself to put some safety money away, if that makes sense. Or that's a conversation that comes up this week, that's something that needs to be done. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I don't get on Facebook very often, but I did see something recently where you were off visiting. You're never home, lady. You're never home. And I feel like Vespa is really pulling you back home in some way. But is it back home in Las Vegas or is it back home here? And I think it's back home here that keeps pulling you. The issue is that it's focused on long-term goals. Long-term goals, you don't want to look backwards, you want to look forwards. So I feel like you're doing the Gemini thing. You're like, this is what I'm going to do. Oh, let me get distracted and go over here. Okay, no, I'm focused now. No, let me get distracted and go over here because I can play. It's more fun over here. I know it's hard. I don't think I know a Gemini who doesn't struggle with this, but the reason why it's such a lesson for Geminis is because without that structure, you never get anywhere. You bounce from one thing to another to another. And I know that you are capable of not doing that. I'm not saying that you're destroying your life or anything like that, but I know that you're capable of focusing when you choose to focus. So it's hard not to get distracted. Obviously, if it's an emergency, you need to do what you need to do. I just feel like Vespa is really pulling you home. And while you feel like it's pulling you backwards, back home to California, it's actually pulling you to explore being home specifically, as in your new life, right? And I'm not saying you're ignoring it or running away from it, but it is new. It is different. It does feel different. It feels good. But it's very easy for us to convince ourselves that if we don't run, then something is going to happen and it's going to hurt us. And that's really what's coming up around all of that for you this week. So something to chew on, something to think about. The other thing that is coming up for you this week is okay, it's dumb, but I've done it. Okay. If your check engine light comes on, check your gas cap, make sure it's on tight enough. It's a thing. In case you didn't know, it's a thing. Before you panic. That way you can just avoid panicking altogether, because ain't nobody got time for that. That's what I have for you. Jeannette. Okay, moving on to Connie. So we got some fun stuff going on in Leo. First of all, Mars is leaving Leo this week, so we can say goodbye to Mars. Still in your sign Sunday, moving on by Monday. So pretty early on this week. You do still feel the effects of him while he's on the cusp of the sign. So at the end of the week, he's 3 degrees into the next sign, which means we're moving away from that cusp. The cusp being within 5 degrees but a really close proximity of feeling that energy is about 0, 1 to 2 degrees. So by the time we get to 3, we're hardly feeling it at all. As he's leaving your sign, he is in a square with Uranus, also in conjunction with, and he's also, I should say, in conjunction with Venus. So the two planets are working together with this beautiful masculine feminine balance that they create together in a square with Uranus. Uranus is focused on finances, and of course, Mars and Venus continue to be focused on your support system or lack thereof, depending on what's going on here. So we've talked about this could be the family. We've talked about this could be work. Or work related in some way, because you haven't really been being supported at work. So there is an element of that as well. But I also feel very strongly this week that this challenge isn't about whether you're being supported or not. This challenge is all about whether you need support. Everybody loves support. Everybody would like to be supported. That doesn't mean that you have to have it in order to achieve something. So obviously, if we use work as an example, if they don't do their job, you can't do your job. I get that. Okay. So in that sense, then yes, you can't function without support. I get that. But talking about emotional support, yes, I agree with you. Every human being deserves it. And we should have it. But we can't always have it. We can't always get what we want. That song has been going through my head for like an hour and a half now, and I don't even know why. It's that Rolling Stones song. You can't always get what you want. But if you try sometime, you just might find you get what you need. Maybe that was for you. I don't know. It's been going through my head for a while. In any case, it's true. You don't always get what you want, but most of the time you do get what you need. So do you need support? Maybe you think you do. That does not necessarily mean that the universe thinks you do. Not from human beings, right? Lean on the support of that fantastic family that you have in spirit, because you really do have a great crew around you for the support, if that makes sense. I know in many cases, a lot of people are just like, well, okay, I'll just get support from invisible people. That helps. Okay. Honestly, it really depends on your mindset around that and how used to it you are. I mean, when it's very new, it's hard to believe in that support. But the more you lean on it and the more you see little ways that it's working, like your grandma shopping with you right now, the more comfortable it becomes. And honestly, like, it's not that I never get scared going anywhere by myself, but I definitely do it less, because I'm like, I've got like 20 people going with me. So I'm not by myself at all. And if I get lost, they'll help navigate me. And they literally always do. It's really awesome. So I feel like this is not just about whether or not you're getting the support. This is about you realizing that it's not about what's wrong with you and why aren't you getting support. This is about, this isn't working, this is wrong, I have to fix it, period. Because if they can't fix their problem, you have to fix yours. You can't think about it, you can't wish that it wasn't happening, you can't complain about it because now all of a sudden you have to look for another job or whatever. I mean, God, we waste so much energy doing that. I can't even tell you how much energy I've wasted doing that in my life. I probably could climb Mount Everest by now with the amount of energy that I did choose to waste. So that's one thing. I really feel like it's the lesson is, okay, I'm just done. I'm done thinking about this. I'm done waiting. I'm done being patient. I'm done hoping something's gonna happen, and I'm gonna just deal with this myself. Kind of a mentality. And that's really what that square is all about. The opposition that Mars has with Saturn becomes lighter and lighter as the week progresses, as Mars moves out of your sign, which is good. But it's still present, at least in the beginning of the week, with Saturn being focused on your day-to-day schedule. Saturn is retrograde. So Saturn is all about personal responsibility. It's retrograding that personal responsibility back to us. It's saying, are you taking responsibility for your day-to-day schedule, or are you bumping that responsibility to somebody else? So honestly, the way that I kind of look at the whole thing and interpret the whole thing really is all about, I mean, I hear people coming up with excuses all day long about why they're not where they're supposed to be. I've heard myself come up with those excuses many times also, believe it or not. All I'm doing in that place is saying I lack the power over my own life. And for anybody that really, 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 really knows me, that makes no sense at all. Because honestly, relying on anybody else is just not my thing, because I've learned that people are unreliable. And you've learned that people are unreliable. So if we both learn that lesson, we might want to stop relying on them. You know what I mean? So that's one thing. The other thing that I am being shown is I'm looking at this really funny advertisement for Temu actually, and they got a cat in a sling. The cat's just like hanging there in the sling. I assume so you can, I don't know, clip claws or whatever. It's kind of funny though. I thought I'd share it with you. It actually looks like the cat is being suspended in these giant panties. I'm just saying. Anyway, other thing that I'm being shown for you. So I do see a few appointments, maybe even another additional appointment coming up on your schedule. So it's not that you're not getting appointments. I really do feel like things are starting to move in that direction in terms of the place that you work. So I do see the problem, a solution happening. But it's a slow process, if that makes sense. It's not like you go from not having anything to being completely overloaded. I can see that happening later on down the road, but I do see quite a few, at least 4, and maybe in an addition or 2 as the week progresses, if that makes sense. Like something bumps onto your schedule. Frankie says, be aware of a man. This is a client. I don't know if this is your engineer guy or if this is a new engineer guy. The behavior is familiar to that. Almost like somebody who wants to trap you, asks the same question, but rewords it to try and get a different answer. It's like he's playing games. I really can't describe it in a way. It's like he's playing games. And Frankie's saying, don't let him do that to you. Call him out on it in a diplomatic way, of course. There's also a lady that I'm being shown who's just a sweetheart. Actually, her energy is very much like your grandma's energy. And that's going to be actually a very productive appointment. We'll put it that way. That's what I have for you this week. Moving on to Jenny. Mars is, we just talked this morning, actually. And I said, I know Mars is moving out of Leo soon. Well, actually, it's moving out of Leo this week, as a matter of fact. 29 degrees on Sunday, 0 degrees on Monday. And by the end of the week, 3 degrees, which means you will feel the effects of Mars still in the beginning of the week. But as you get closer and closer to the end of the week, the feeling of those effects starts to go away as it moves farther and farther away from being on the cusp of those two signs. So that's really good. The not so great news is the challenges that Mars and Venus are creating for you this week. So specifically, we're looking at Mars and Venus in a square with Uranus. Uranus is a very rebellious influence, and that influence is focused on your finances right now. And honestly, what I see coming out of this for you is you just started standing up and going, you know what? I'm sick and tired of saving up money to do all this stuff for everybody else. I'm putting something aside for me. This is my trip or my shopping spree or whatever it is, and I think that's awesome. But Mars and Venus are focused on your support system, which means that people are just not going to support that. Or you get fed up and decide that you're going to set money aside for you because you're sick and tired of being told where to put your money, which you don't have a husband. So nobody should be telling you where to put your damn money anyways. I mean, for crying out loud, people and their goddamn opinions. It really is ridiculous these days, I'm telling you. Mars is also in an opposition with Saturn, and Saturn's focus is on your day-to-day schedule. With Saturn being retrograde, that sort of reflects our responsibilities back on us. So honestly, this challenge really creates one of those situations where you're sort of saying, I don't have time, and it's because of all these people that I don't have time. Own your shit, lady. That's what Saturn is saying. Own your shit, okay? You don't have time because you decided to take a 4-hour nap one day, which, by the way, you totally deserve, okay? I mean, we don't have time because we don't always use our time wisely, all right? And that's okay. You don't have to put it on somebody else. Not saying that you're doing that. But it was really empowering for me to just say no. Or no, owner, thank you, the nice way, or just a blunt, straight and to the point, no, I don't want to, kind of way. So I try not to do that necessarily, but now, I mean, that word has gotten me out of doing so many things that I just don't want to do. And I don't even feel bad about it anymore. At first I really did feel bad. And after now, I'm just like, you know what? No, most of the time I really don't feel bad. I think the only time I do is when it's something for my kids. And I know that the best thing for me to do is to say no so they can figure it out. And I still feel bad, even though I'm doing the best thing for them. That, I think, is a never ending cycle of bullshit. So, don't think I'm going to get over that one anytime soon. I think that's just part of being a mom. But the rest of the time, even when it comes to things like socializing, I don't mind socializing. I love to socialize. I'm tired of being surrounded by idiots. Like, I don't want to be around that low vibe energy anymore. And so, when I'm invited to go to one of those low energy places, no, that's it. That's all I got. Just no. No excuses, no nothing. No. I just keep saying it over and over again. No. It gets easier. It gets really fun too. I love that word. People don't even, all I hear is, hey, can you? And I say no before, just because it's so much fun to say. That's one thing. The other thing that I'm actually being shown for you this week is balance is important this week. There was a holiday last week and you went camping. You took a few days off, much well deserved. But I know that as much as we love those holidays, coming back from them and getting back into the routine and stuff like that is always difficult. And in some cases, you're overloaded with work. And then I think this is why balance is important. That your rest time, you have, well, I was gonna say you have equal amounts of rest time and work time, but haha, I know we're all just kind of sort of dreaming on that one. As much equality as you can. And if that free time is very limited, then it's really important to use that no word. Just saying. That's what I have for you this week, Jenny. I'm going to move on to Linda. Interesting things. And we're going to start with Virgo being focusing on inner trauma. That's just awesome. And then Mars moving into Virgo this week, which luckily he's not focused on inner trauma this time. Pretty darn close, but not quite. Actually, he's bringing an influence of your support system in as he comes along. So when you're going through inner trauma, this is going to create an issue of not feeling supported when you need it. What's interesting to me, I was going to say funny, but it's really not funny. What's interesting to me is you're not somebody who asks for support very often. And I don't feel that you're going to ask for support right now. And it does not matter what the logical explanation for that is. When you say, I'm not going to ask for support, I don't need it, I'm a strong, independent woman, I'm good, and then you don't get support, you still feel like, I did all this stuff for all these people and they can't even support me when I need it, is bullshit, right? We all do it. And I think women do it a lot. Like a lot. We set ourselves up, and the minute we start popping out children, we set ourselves up again. It's a horrible, vicious, terrible cycle that we do. And I feel like you have really got that cycle under control, but something is going to trigger it and throw it all out of whack this week. I'm just saying, okay? When that happens, take the time. I know you don't have any, but take the time, work through your emotions on that, work through your trigger, take it out of what everybody else is doing and their responsibility and take it back into what your responsibility is. And this is what Mars's opposition with Saturn as it's coming into your sign is really, really telling you, because Saturn is retrograde. Saturn is mirroring that responsibility back at us. Are you taking responsibility for your own stuff? Are you carrying responsibilities that belong to other people? You probably not. I would say that is not as much of an issue for you. But, and I know that you take responsibility for your own crap. I know you do. But you're in a completely different zone right now. And this is a zone that you've never been in. You don't have control over a lot of things. It's like looking at it like you're slowly losing control over your life, which you're not. Okay. And I'm also told to tell you this is temporary. And you're going to say, I don't know how it's temporary. It's temporary. Okay. That's what I'm being told. And I'm going to just stick with that. One thing that I feel is something that may come up around you this week is okay, weird, but I just saw a deer wander. It's like it was literally like I'm looking out the window, which I'm not, and a deer just sort of wandered into my vision, but it was all in here. Okay, what does that mean? To me, this honestly, when I take the time to sit and watch the deer, I'm taking quiet time, because that's what deer are to me. They're just very quiet creatures that don't disturb anything. They just kind of sort of do what they do, right? And it's so much fun to watch them do nothing. And I feel that that's what is coming up around this, is that it's okay to take some time to do nothing. You have to give yourself permission to take some time to do nothing every now and then. And I think the biggest, most important reason why you need to do this is because you have so many different challenges that are taking place right now. You haven't given yourself enough time to relax and think about what the solution to those problems is. It's not a cut and dry black and white solution this time. You need to give it more time. You need to meditate. You need to meditate. Really important. They're calling you out today. More time meditating. The solution is just gonna pop into your head. You're gonna be like, oh my God, it was like so easy. Like, I can't even believe it was so easy. And I just didn't see it right here in front of my face. Why? Because there's like a million other things swimming around in front of it. Such a Virgo. I swear. I love you to pieces, by the way. You're like one of the baddest women I know, and that's in a good way. That's what I have for you this week. And I'm going to move on to Matalyn. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Okay. First, we'll start with the fact that Virgo continues to be focused on inner trauma. This happens for about 3 or 4 weeks a year, every year. We'll take time focusing on this. So any kind of traumatic stuff that you have emotional triggers with, those triggers come up more often during that time. To add another layer to that, Mars is moving into Virgo this week. So basically hops in 0 degrees Monday. Ta-da! Let's kick off the week with Mars in Virgo. And Mars is focused on your support system. Now, Mars is a couple of different things. Mars represents ambition. Mars, like Venus is the young girl, Mars is the young man, and he's out sowing his wild oats, and he's off doing his, getting all that crazy boy energy out before he decides to mature and become a man. Which means that Mars is also very aggressive, like a young man would be. Mars has very aggressive tendencies and is associated with anger to a certain extent. That being said, that is coming in focused on your support system. This is where it starts to get really interesting, because I happen to know that either your support system is going through some problems that could play out as anger, or that you're very angry about this issue that you're going through with your support system, or it could be both. Also, as Mars is coming into Virgo, it's coming in opposition with Saturn, which is retrograde. Now, Saturn is the planet of responsibility. And when Saturn is retrograde, it reflects that responsibility back at you, mirrors it right back, puts it right back in your face, says, whose responsibility is this? Yours? Then you need to take responsibility for it if it's yours. Not yours, then you need to give it back to the person that it belongs to and stop taking on responsibilities of other people. Now, very specifically here, this creates sort of an issue for you, okay? But there's a way around the issue. There's always a way around the issue. You have mass amounts of support, okay? You have mass amounts of support. You have people around you. You have so many people that love you. It's unreal. Okay. I've never known anybody that had this many people that just, oh my God, Maddie's so awesome. Okay. You really do. Don't see it, call me. I will make you a list. If you really, really, really must have one, I will make you a list. Yes, your mom is the most important person that should be there to support you. And I know that she does. I know that she does. In her heart, that's all she wants to do is support you. But that being said, if there is an issue communicating there between the two of you, go to a different source. You do not want to use what's going on with your mom as an excuse why you can't get your shit done. Okay, because the truth is that your mom's responsible for your mom. Maddie's responsible for Maddie. And no matter what happens, it all stems from the same place anyway. She's not taking responsibility for her actions. You're not taking responsibility for yours. Then you're doing the same thing anyways. So you're hating what she's doing and yet taking it on at the same time, which doesn't make much sense. And it's the thing that we always do. Hence the reason why I smoke cigarettes. I know it's stupid, but I literally fought my mom on that my whole life. I hated it. I hated being around it. I didn't want to smell it. I didn't want nothing to do with it. What did I do? I went and smoked cigarettes. Like, no, it doesn't make any sense at all. Why we human beings do the dumbest things in the world? But you are a youngin' who's aware because you put yourself, you said, I want to be aware. You're a youngin' who's aware. Being aware means that you get to deal with these situations as they come up now, so you're not dealing with them later, right? Which means you get to fix a problem. It sets you up for success right off the bat. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be a kid and enjoy the rest of your teens or enjoy your 20s. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying don't do stupid things. Just be accountable for your actions. The more accountable you are for everything in your life, the more control you have of the direction of your life overall. And it also kind of puts you in that independent mindset, if that makes sense. So you're not necessarily putting yourself in a position to rely on others. Because you have such a massive support system, it's very easy for you to fall into that I have to have somebody to rely on trap, because you've always had so much support. So the more you can grasp that independence, the better, if that makes sense. The other thing that I'm being shown for you this week, I don't get it because I see a bear. But this could also be like a totem bear, if that makes sense. Like it's associated with a place. It even actually looks like the I don't know if you guys have a well, you have to have a Black Bear Diner because they totally started in Reading, but it looks like that bear that's outside the Black Bear Diner. There's something about this bear, okay? So if either you're looking for something, the bear sort of pops up because it's right next to the bear, or it's right next to the Black Bear Diner, or your grandmother is saying that somehow when you see the bear, it's a reminder of something. But there's importance to the bear. And it has to do with location, location, location. That's what she's saying. Location, location, location. Don't ask me what that means. Hopefully you can figure it out. And that's what I have for you, darling. And now it's time to welcome lovely Glennis to our list today. It's actually kind of interesting because I literally lost a Libra and gained a Libra all at the same time. Literally, it happened within an hour. So good on you for not leaving the Libra box empty. No planets in Libra this week, which is awesome. We do have Ceres influencing Libra, and Ceres is a secondary, less intense aspect. It has, obviously, it does have an influence, but it's usually when the bigger planets are in there, its influence is not quite so heavy, if that makes sense. With that being the only influence, it's all we really have to go by. And focuses on self. So it's all about you this week. Actually, it's all about you for the next few weeks. And Ceres is a very interesting focus on that aspect of your life, I have to say, because Ceres is known as the Great Mother. So Ceres has this very maternal, very motherly, caretaking influence to begin with. And all the energy is being focused on yourself. Now, there's two things that come up this week around that, okay? The first thing is having to do with making an appointment. Either this has to do with a checkup that you've been putting off, or something that's coming up that you're like, I know I have to get that checked, but if I don't want it to be a process. It's such a process. Can we just put it off a little bit longer? You wind up putting it off too long. So an appointment needs to be made ASAP. This is part of your self-care. The other thing that seems to be coming up for you this week is I feel like you have been doing a lot of self-care. I mean, it takes most of us a lifetime to learn it, and that is something that you have learned over the course of your lifetime. You are actually one of the few Libras that I know that puts themselves in that position of importance in terms of your own self-care. Not that you put yourself above everybody else. That's different. Okay. And I know you struggle with that a lot because your heart still wants to sacrifice yourself for everybody else. You just can't do it anymore. You can't bring yourself to do it anymore. But I do see this week that being a challenge, if that makes sense, like around taking care of yourself. Something comes in to infiltrate that, and it's another person or another individual, but I see a female, and I really feel that this is an opportunity to teach this person about self-care also. So you're leading by example, but I feel like there's almost a conversation about it, if that makes sense. Now, this is a female. I don't know if this is like a friend or if this is like one of your kids or grandkids, or you have so many of them. But this is a woman that just really needs this. And somehow I see her landing on your doorstep. That doesn't mean physical doorstep. It could just be that, the conversation lands when it does, if that makes sense. Last thing that I am being shown for you, I just heard a voice, an Australian voice that said, remember, it's not deer, it's kangaroos, because you guys don't have deer, you have kangaroos. I don't, it's just like in and out. I don't know. I was talking about deer earlier. Maybe that's why. We don't have deer. I don't know who this young man is. He's very funny though. I want to say he's actually associated with this woman that I was talking about a few minutes ago. Someone she's related to, married to, something like that. But I want to say you knew this young man also. And I also want to say that it's a very difficult relationship, the two of you in the beginning, and then not so much towards the end, if that makes sense. It's all my fault why it was difficult in the beginning. Meaning his fault, not mine, obviously. Obviously, I wasn't there. In any case, he's just coming through and saying high five about something that you did, that you accomplished, that's excellent, that's awesome, that you should be like really, really, really celebrating way more than you are. Okay. And that's what I have for you, my friend. I'm going to take a quick break and then I'm going to finish off the list here. I'm going to pause. Okay, moving on to Regina. We have nothing in Scorpio this week. Nice, quiet, no planets moving into Scorpio at all this week, which is kind of nice. It can be kind of boring, but it is kind of nice. Focus is on the past this week, which is kind of interesting. Thought about you a little bit when I was doing the horoscopes for this week, actually, in terms of an individual from the past maybe popping up, or specific situations or things that are reminding you of a specific time in the past, if that makes sense. And I see it as maybe a combination of a good and a bad memory, if that makes sense. Like it could be a relationship with somebody. There was a lot of parts of it that were really good, but there was a lot of parts of it that weren't right either. There's like a hope of sort of reconnecting with this person and hoping that things have changed. And in some ways they have, and in some ways they haven't changed at all, if that makes sense, which can be really frustrating. I do feel like this is going to bring up a lot of things from the past in an emotional way, if that makes sense. Not a heavy emotional way, but an emotional way nonetheless. And I feel like the biggest thing is to try your hardest not to get sucked into that tornado. You understand what I'm saying? We get into this emotional space and it becomes a tornado of all the emotional stuff that we're just sort of stuck in the middle of and we can't seem to get out of it, right? And you can get out of it, but it's really difficult. You really have to work for it, right? Or you can try not to get into the tornado in the first place. That's actually the easiest way to do it, is to avoid the tornado as much as you possibly can. I think a lot of what holds us up as human beings is holding on to the hope of things being a certain way when they're not, if that makes sense. And that's I think it's a killer for relationships. I think it's a killer for a lot of different situations when you're dealing with other people, period. You know, we all have these expectations. Expectations really are the root of a lot of our emotional problems. So when we eliminate that expectation of somebody being something they're not, or somebody being somebody that we really want them to be, but they're just not capable of being that person, things do get a lot easier, if that makes sense. And I feel like this past person coming in really is, if not helping you learn that lesson, it's showing you just how far you've come in learning that lesson already, if that makes sense. So that's one thing that's coming up around you. The other thing that I am being shown for you, I see bats, and no, it's not COVID. Poor bats got destroyed by COVID. No, I'm seeing bats, and I know that the spirit animal, or the meaning, I'm sorry, the spiritual meaning of bat is transformation, because bats are mammals, and they're really the only mammals that can fly, that have the capability of. And the legend around bats is that they were land animals and they grew wings and evolved into flying mammals. So they managed to defy nature in some way in order to evolve into what they are. And they did that against all odds, because that's never happened, you know, except for with them. They believed in it enough, and I guess they achieved it. So I feel like you're in a transformation, you're earning your wings in some way, shape, or form. And I feel like while that's really scary, and while all the other mammals are going, you can't possibly do that, you're still doing it. And that's the point. And you just got to keep on keeping on, if that makes sense. The last thing that I'm being shown for you is I am seeing a ring, like a gold ring, like a wedding ring. I'm trying to figure out why. Either this ring was lost and it's going to be found. And I have to say, this is not a woman's ring. This is a man's ring. It's bigger, like a man's ring. Either it was lost and it's going to be found, or there's something going on, you know, if your husband, you married, and if you're married, there might be something going on around him, if that makes sense. And it's something that he's having a difficult time processing or dealing with in some way. I am literally seeing like this emotional outburst, but it's not like let me just put it this way. If he's one of those people that, you know, calls and, you know, to vent his frustration, you're going to have a lot of time listening to that venting. My advice is, if this is a communication pattern, to where every time you talk to him, that's what it is, you get to hear about all the messed up things that happen in his day, and that's pretty much your whole conversation, start putting a time limit on the venting and move the conversation to something else. You don't have to do drastic at first, but it actually does kind of work. I've used it. So I think in many ways we don't realize that we go through the day, and we all do it, because you can probably take this too. We go through the day, and as we're going through the day, we are collecting all the weirdo, messed up, stupid stuff that go on throughout the day, so that we can report it to somebody later. And it just feels like you're always having a negative conversation. So try and throw a wrench into that pattern, if that makes sense. That's what I have for you this week, Regina. I'm going to move on to Theresa. Focus is on the past this week. No planets influencing that whatsoever. No planets in Scorpio whatsoever, which makes things nice and quiet. With focus on the past, there's two things that come up around that. One, I kind of get the feeling of, give me 1 second. Let me get the door. Okay, sorry, that was the door. It was not opportunity knocking. Well, actually, it could have been. I am working a deal with that lady. So, anyways, focus is on the past this week. Let's just start over. Focus is on the past this week. No planets to influence this. One of the things that is coming up is I feel like this is a pattern that goes way back with a particular individual that you just don't have time for today. It's literally like, I'm not doing this with you today. I'm not playing this game with you today. You want to play, you play on your own, hanging up the phone. Do you miss when you could really hang up a phone? You know, these flimsy things we got here now, we can't just like slam that down without breaking. But those old phones that you can't destroy with a bomb, oh, I do miss that. I really do. And I feel like this would be so satisfying after this conversation. When I say old patterns, and I'm literally seeing something to where you think or you hope that this person is doing better and not continuing these patterns, and then it turns out that they are, and it's blatantly obvious, and they've been lying about it, and it's really frustrating. And in any case, you have more important things to deal with in that moment than dealing with this particular situation. It's not the type of situation to where if you don't deal with it right now, somebody's going to die. Okay. This is more of a minor irritation when you have bigger things to think about right now. That's one thing. Another past pattern actually seems to be popping up for you as well, but this is a personal pattern for you. And this has to do with your breaking patterns this week. This has to do with self-doubt. This has to do with self-confidence. In a way, I feel like this is, I mean, the way that I'm visualizing it is walking into a new client that is a totally different type of client. You've got all these nerves because this is the first time you're doing this. You're you're over preparing for it. It's going to be fine, you know. I mean, literally, you're going to walk in, it's going to be a relaxed environment right away. Everything is going to be gravy, right? I think the past pattern here has to do with stinking thinking more than anything. It's just your automatic going to worry place. And, you know, this time you don't need to do that. I think that's the whole lesson here is you don't need to do that. You could save so much energy for yourself if you just avoid all that as much as you possibly can. Last thing that I'm being shown for you is something about a car, and this is not your car. I don't know if this is a rental car. There's something about you getting in this car and just not getting a good feeling about it. And if that is the case, you go get another car. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. Go with your gut because your gut knows everything. Okay, so that's what I have for you, Theresa. Gonna move on to Jillian. We have no planets in Scorpio this week. Focuses on the past. It's gonna be a deadly trap, really, because there's so many things in the past that existed that don't exist anymore. You know, I think in many different parts of our lives, we have a tendency to focus on this one time where we thought everything was great and just want to be back there, or a place where we felt secure and we just want to be back there. I really feel that a lot of this focus on the past, I mean, there's a lot of things about your present that you love, but I think a lot of it is part of your transition from childhood to adulthood, if that makes sense. You guys are turning 21. I mean, you're officially adults anyways. It's, you were officially adults a couple of years ago, but the transition takes quite a while, and not everybody really fully embraces it, I'm telling you. And I understand why, because adulting does suck a lot of the time, but you really haven't had the fun yet. And there is a lot of wonderful things about being an adult. Everybody always says it's hard. Everybody always goes on and on about all of their problems with it. You are better than that. Don't get sucked into that bullshit. Okay. Find what is fun about being an adult. And there are a lot of things that are fun about being an adult. And we can't say we can't play on playgrounds anymore because they have adult playgrounds. It's a thing now. Okay. So we even have our own playground. We don't even have anything to complain about. The word opportunity is coming up around you this week. So this could be a new like work opportunity, quite possibly, or a new opportunity that you might be looking into that's presenting itself. This could be an opportunity around your boyfriend also. So it may not be you, but him. It could be two different opportunities, one for each of you, if you're both looking. I want to say that there's something about this opportunity that you have experience, but there's parts of it that are a little scary, maybe something new that hasn't been explored yet. Don't let that stop you from taking it, because it's a really good opportunity, or it definitely has a lot of potential. And those new things that are scary are just new things for you to learn, to put on your resume for later, because you may not need them, but if you do, it's there, and that's definitely a good thing. I don't get this at all. I'm literally seeing you in a lobster outfit, and I don't know why. So maybe it's a job at Red Lobster, or if you haven't looked at Red Lobster, maybe you need to. I don't know, because it's just like all I see is your face and you're smiling, and then there's just this lobster outfit around you. I don't know. It's really, really weird. In any case, we'll just leave it. We'll leave that there. Last thing I have for you, darling. Like you need another animal. Oh my God. I'm literally seeing you finding an animal that needs to be taken care of and loved. Oh my God, look at it. Like you need another animal to take care of, but I can't say nothing, because that's exactly what I said right before Emma showed up in front of my house. Not a single other animal is coming into this house. And a week later, there's a baby crying and dying in front of my house. And of course, I picked him up and brought him home. He's sleeping right now, you know. So I do see that as a possibility, although I don't necessarily see you keeping the animal. It's possible that you may rehome it. Again, going back to working with animals, revisit that. And that's what I have for you, darling. Moving on to Sheri. I told you last week that that was your last video, but technically this week isn't over, and I'm still waiting for you to call me. So you have one more day. Oh, Sheri. I have I cannot function with anything without you infiltrating my brain all week long, infiltrating my brain. I don't even know how to feel anymore about any of it, which is, I don't know if it's weird. It is and it isn't. It's a weird mixture of I love you and I'm really pissed off at you right now. And it's a really weird mixture of hoping that you can do better and kick this problem, which it is a problem, or giving up hope like you're never going to be able to do it, you know? Kicking myself for enabling it all these years and excusing it. Just so much shit. You have no idea how much shit you are putting me through. And you're not even doing anything. I mean, you, to me, directly at me. But I don't like it. Everything inside of me is just make it go away. Because I've been here before. And I know the behavior and I know everything that you're doing, and everything that you're doing lines up with everything that I know. And that's the scary part, because I've seen it successful and I've seen it not successful. And I know what the outcome is either way. And it's hard either way. But something occurred to me in this whole process. The first thing that occurred to me was you just being a chicken shit because you don't want to get old like the rest of us. Well, fuck you. Okay. I just to say that. I'm just going to say it like that right now. Screw that. We're all supposed to grow old together. So fuck you if you don't like it. I mean, I love you. But also, I can see where this is like a whole different world and where you're just lost. You don't know what to do. Your child is grown up. You were set to take care of your parents. Your mom is gone. Don't know. I mean, what are you supposed to do after your dad is gone? Right? I mean, I get that. It's a very scary thing, Sheri. I totally get it. I mean, I want to help. We have all the resources for help. You have to be the one to take it. You have to decide. You have to make the choice. There's no planets in Sagittarius this week. Focus is on your mind and, all the ways that you justify to get what you want. And that's the pattern that's always saved you and destroyed you at the same time. Oddly enough, maybe that needs some unpacking too. I want to have faith in you. I want to have faith that you're going to be there. I want to have faith that we have adventures now from here on out, because our kids are fucking grown, man. And it's that this is our time. We're still young-ish. I still hang out with a lot of people who are older than me, so it does make me feel young. And I definitely feel young every time I go to my grandma's house. I will say that. Which you do have that advantage to a certain extent, but seriously, call me. Love you. That's what I have for you this week. Moving on to Peg. No planets in Sagittarius this week. Focus is on the mind. I see some ideas coming out of this. Number one, write them down. But I also see these are not just new ideas, these are ideas to build on something that you've already created or already started, if that makes sense. Two things come up with that. One, don't rush through it. Your guides are saying do not rush through it. Okay. This is typical Sagittarian behavior to go from the beginning to the end really quick. But the word that they're using is germinate. These things have to germinate. So they happen in their own time. So try not to rush through it. Enjoy the process is the other thing that I'm also hearing about that. I also get totally sidetracked, like somewhere in the middle of the week. You're very focused on your plans and you get totally sidetracked. And this is not like a 5-minute sidetrack. This is like a couple of days sidetracked, and it's actually a frustrating sidetrack. It's like you don't everything inside of you is like, this shouldn't be my job. I shouldn't be the one doing this right now. But there's a reason why you're the one that was called upon to do it. And I feel like it actually makes more sense and it'll be easier for you if you focus on what that reason is as opposed to why you're so frustrated about it, if that makes sense. I'm also seeing Piglet, the Winnie the Pooh commercial, not commercials, but the Winnie the Pooh cartoons. I'm seeing little Piglet, and Piglet was always very nervous all the time. And I feel like that there's that's something coming from somebody around you. They're like a little piglet. I wouldn't call them a piglet, but this even could be part of the distraction. It's like this person is a ball of nerves. And your energy is really calming to that, if that makes sense. And it's like, you don't mind that on one hand, and yet on the other, it's like, why do I always have to be the one that's person? But you understand the reason. So it's like literally I'm seeing a struggle inside of you between, knowing that you need to do this, but not wanting to do it. Totally get it. I feel the bottom line here with this is to go with the flow. I'm being told to tell you to go with the flow. The more you go with the flow, the less time this interruption is going to take, if that makes sense. If you try and push it along, it's just not going to work. It's like it'll take longer. Last thing that I have for you is okay. There's something about revisiting a place that you think you know. Okay. It's like you see something that you didn't see before because before wasn't time to see it. It's like watching a TV show again, for me. Like I'll watch a series that's fantastic and then I'll go back and watch it again to pick up all the things that I missed the first time I watched it. This has something to do about revisiting some place that you've been before. So, and I want to say that this is not like a place that you've worked before. I keep seeing like a museum or some sort of early American something or other that would exist over there and not here, if that makes sense. But there's something about it that just, it's like you're going to get something out of it that is really important, but only to you, if that makes sense. So, if you're resisting going someplace you've already been, don't, because there might be something that you can learn that you didn't realize you could, if that makes sense. And that's what I have for you, Peg. Moving on to Sheri. Focus is on the mind and how you think with no planets to influence that at all, which is kind of cool. I actually see a lot of ideas coming up for you too. Definitely write them down so you don't forget them, because I see that happen. You get like this influx of stuff and then, it's just kind of in and out. I know you keep the ones that are important, but there's a couple of other ones that might be important, or they're reoccurring ideas, I should say, that maybe you've forgotten in the past. These are various different ideas. So part of this has to do with work and your business, but I think a big part of this has to do with other things as well. I am getting the word reorganize. So, but I'm not looking at reorganization as reorganizing your stuff. It's almost like reorganizing your life in a way, if that makes sense. I do feel like somebody has something to do with this. Either they're the reason you're reorganizing your life. I'm not really sure about that. The other thing that I'm literally seeing you with this giant pink bow in your hair, which makes zero sense at all. Like, I can't imagine ever seeing you with this giant pink bow in your hair. But this to me is like an inner child thing, and I feel like there is some sort of inner child thing that's going to come up for you this week, and it's going to be kind of a heavy one. Which you are, of course, free to reach out and call me if you would like somebody to go through it with you. I will totally do that. It's really deep, and it's not really deep. I just feel like it goes way, 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 way back for some reason, and hence that's the reason, or why you got this giant pink bow on, if that makes sense. This is about little Sheri, not necessarily anything that you're going through right now, although something that you're going through right now could trigger it, if that makes sense. I know you're gonna take the time to deal with that. You usually do. Well, actually, I'm being told that you might spend some time trying to avoid it, and then you'll take the time to deal with it. I guess as long as it gets done, doesn't really matter, does it? That's what I have for you, Sheri. And finally, we're going to wrap this up with Alyssa. We, of course, still have Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. Both planets are retrograde. Saturn is creating a pretty big challenge with its opposition with Mars. Saturn's focus is on your day-to-day schedule in opposition with Mars, which is influencing your support system. I want to say two things are coming up with this. One, you're not getting things done in the time that you have them because you're not utilizing your time wisely. You're not taking responsibility for your time. And one of the things that is very common with most people is placing that blame on somebody else. Other circumstances that are taking place that are making people not supportive or whatever, right? I'm not going to get too much into that. The bottom line is don't do it. Okay? Because nobody, it's I just want to start telling people nobody cares. Nobody cares what your excuses are. Okay, you didn't do it. Did you do it? No? Okay, then you didn't do it. That's really all that matters. And if you didn't do it today, that's okay. Make it a point to do it tomorrow. There are days where I am just procrastinating and being lazy. And then there are days when my body is like, no, lady, you're resting today. And I listen to my body when it says, lady, you're resting, because I have learned the hard way why you don't do that. So I don't feel guilty about rest days. I feel a little guilty. I feel guilty about rest days, right? I do feel guilty when I just take a day that I could potentially get some things done and just completely waste it. Okay. There is a difference. To counteract that challenge, we have a grand sextile with Neptune, of course, which is also focused on your day-to-day schedule. Uranus, which is all about coming up with crazy out-of-the-box ideas around money, which is awesome. And Pluto, which is retrograde and focused on the home. So Pluto retrograde, Pluto's your source of personal power. It's all about transformation and growth. When it's retrograde, it feels like nothing is changing. But sometimes nothing is changing is a good thing, because it's hard to grow when things are changing around you, right? Because you're already dealing with your own changes. You got to deal with changes around you. So actually, this isn't a bad thing that nothing is changing, nothing is happening in your environment. In fact, we'd like it to hopefully stay the way that it is, if it is the way you need it to be, as much as possible. Uranus, with this money-making thing, that's what's really interesting, because Uranus is very rebellious. Uranus's energy is all about doing something different. We're not going and getting a 9-to-5 basic job like everybody else has always done from the beginning of time. We are coming up with new ideas, different ways of generating that income. So I actually am seeing, coming out of this, a couple of ideas of additions to your income, if that makes sense. And these planets are sort of coming together to help you with that. And one of these opportunities is going to come through somebody that you know. So just throwing that out there also. The last thing that I'm being shown for you is there is a guy around you. Quite a bit this week, I say. It's not a bad thing. Um, now we know who's sucking up all your time. I just heard your brother say that. Your brother just said, "Oh, now I know who's sucking up all of our time." I don't think we can solely blame him, but in any case, yeah. So of course you want to spend the time, but you know, you want to take care of your responsibilities to yourself always first. So that's what I have for you, my dear. That's what I have for everybody. Thanks for coming and hanging out and checking out the readings for the week. I'm Alyssa Bruce, the Heavy Metal Psychic. I love you guys. And I will see you guys next week. You guys make it a great week, everybody.